It's a question I think a lot of us have kicked around. Why do faith and progress so often feel like they're on opposite teams? It's this deep question about knowledge, about tradition, and whether truth really has to be ancient to be true. So today, we're going to dive into why new ideas so often seem to clash with the old, and what that really means for us.
We're going to start with a question from a student, and honestly, it's one that probably sounds familiar. Why does it feel like religion is kind of stuck on a collision course with the modern world? Why is truth so often sold to us as something that's ancient, unchanging, and already finished?
To really get to the bottom of this, we have to look back. But we're not digging through history for some dusty old answers. No, we're looking for a critical, cautionary tale. A time when one specific way of thinking basically brought human progress to a grinding halt. Let's get into it.
So our story takes us to the European Middle Ages. Now, during this time, especially as it wore on, this one powerful idea really took hold, the belief that all the important truth had already been figured out. The goal wasn't to discover anything new, but just to guard the old ideas. I mean, can you imagine an entire culture where the library was seen as a fortress to be defended, not a launchpad for new adventures? The result, as our source puts it, was an age of paralyzed minds and suspended thinking. And just think about the consequences of that. When you chain minds to the past, knowledge stops being a living thing. It becomes a museum piece, totally disconnected from the real world. It can't adapt, it can't grow. And this created a huge and really damaging conflict between religious authority and the new things people were discovering about the universe. So the real turning point here was a total shift in mindset. See, the early thinkers, they often saw disagreement as a good thing. It was a sign that people were actually searching for truth. But later, the whole idea of a scholar changed. It became about being a guardian of tradition. Any new idea wasn't seen as an insight, it was a threat. Thinking for yourself practically became a crime, and the human intellect was locked in a prison made of old interpretations.
And the inevitable result of that kind of thinking is this painful split. When religion refuses to even talk to new knowledge, people are forced to make a false choice. You either have to abandon your reason, or you have to abandon your faith. Religion, when it's presented as this rigid, unchanging relic, starts to look like a myth, completely out of touch with reality. Which, of course, brings us to the student's next question, and it's really the heart of this whole thing. If being chained to the past is the problem, then what's the alternative? How do we find a truth that's alive, one that can actually grow and deepen right along with us? The answer, according to the source we're exploring, isn't found in some new rule book. Nope. It's found in a totally different state of being. It's all about unlocking a deeper kind of wisdom by coming at it with humility.
The key concept we need to understand here is an Arabic term, taqwa. Now, this isn't just piety in the sense of, checking off boxes or doing rituals. Think of it as a state of profound God consciousness, this deep humility and an openness of the heart. It's about turning your heart into a receptive vessel, basically making it ready to be filled with a kind of knowledge you just can't get from books alone.
This verse, right here, is central to the whole idea. It's like a direct equation. You cultivate this state of taqwa, this conscious humility, and in return, God teaches you. Knowledge stops being something you conquer with your intellect and becomes a gift you receive.
So how does this actually play out in real life? Well, it's a cycle. You start by genuinely trying to act on the truth you already have. That sincere action is what helps cultivate taqwa in your heart. Then, that state of being strengthens your faith, which makes your heart an even better vessel for God to grant you a deeper, richer understanding. See? It's a journey, not a one-time test.
And here's the really liberating part. What this means is that this path is so empowering. It sets you free. Your spiritual growth doesn't have to depend on you blindly accepting what someone said centuries ago. It comes from your own reflection, your own sincere search, and your own relationship with the divine.
Okay, so how does this ancient idea of taqwa actually help us right now? How does it help us navigate the incredibly complex world we live in, one that's filled with scientific discoveries that can seem, at first glance, to challenge ancient texts?
And right on cue, here comes a student's really practical, urgent question. Yeah, but what about the Big Bang? What about evolution? How is a person of faith supposed to make sense of these scientific realities when they're reading scriptures written thousands of years ago? This approach gives us a powerful new framework, a new way to think. First, we learn to separate the timeless inner wisdom of a text from its outer shell,
which was obviously shaped by its time in history. We can respect past thinkers while also realizing their knowledge was limited. And in this light, science is no longer a threat to God. It's a tool that can reveal the sheer magnificence of His creation in more and more detail. The real key here is intellectual humility.
But let's be crystal clear about something. This way of thinking isn't a new dogma to replace the old one. It is not a final answer. Think of it as a doorway, an entrance into a lifelong journey of learning and discovery. It's a method for growth, not a final destination.
So, all of this brings everything right back to us, doesn't it? Right here, right now. This whole discussion, it's not just a history lesson. It's an invitation for you to start your own journey. I want you to look at this slide as kind of a practical study guide for your own mind. On one side, you have the dogmatic mindset. It fears new ideas, it's terrified of being wrong, it judges everything by what it thinks it already knows. And on the other side, you have the seeker's mindset. It reads to grow, it asks questions to understand, and it searches for truth with patience and an open heart. The question is, which path are you choosing to walk? This quote from our source really just gets to the heart of it all. The person who only reads to judge, to confirm their own biases, they're probably going to miss the whole point. But the person who reads with true humility, with a real desire to grow, that's the one who's going to find the way.
So maybe, just maybe, we've been thinking about faith all wrong. Maybe the greatest act of faith isn't to pretend we have all the answers. Maybe it's having the courage, the humility, and the trust in something bigger than ourselves to just keep asking better and better questions.
And that's where we'll leave it. With one last thought, a question just for you. If this journey of discovery is really open to everyone, if the whole point is to grow instead of stagnate, what is the one question that you will dare to ask first?